is Murder and Mystery with Cyrus Alderwood and Elizabeth Cooper. And up first, before we get too far into our really scrumptious, delicious, naughty little story that we have about our little miss that we're going to talk about, I have Neuromints and Neurogum. I always bring this up to the screen and then I can't find my screen when I have a co-host, but here it is. Man, these things are so refreshing, full of vitamin B to get you energized, focused, clear-headed, fuel for your body, your mind, and your soul. Go to neurogum.com. That's neurogum.com. And even though I messed it up, here it is right here, just so that you can see it in front of you and you can record that as you pause the screen and write it down. Go to Walmart, go to Amazon, go to your local drugstore, and you will find Neuromints and Neurogum. It is so yummy, so refreshing, and I am wide awake with my Neuromints. So thank you so much for being on the show with me. This is our show. Like, this is so fun because we get to do stuff.
Yeah, we had a really good mystery last week, or a couple of weeks ago, and then now you picked a gem of one tonight, which I was fascinating reading about. So, yeah, if anything is weird and mysterious, that's probably got you and me written all over it, probably.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've had so many conversations. I think that's how this show began. You know, we've had so many conversations that just sort of trail and they go on and on and on. And you've done some amazing research. And I definitely want to have you come onto the show and do an interview to where we can talk about some of your latest books and where your research is about to go in the near future and what you have found of the weird, bizarre, you know, mysterious, actual, factual history that we have here in the United States. And where you want to go with it as far as writing about it in the future. So you've got some really cool stuff cooking up.
Yeah, I do. I podcast about it too on the Gonzo Chronicles. So if anybody wants to check that out, just throw that plug in there. I talk about the weird all the time. I've got a really interesting Ouija board episode coming up that no one wants anything to do with. I can understand why. So, but yeah, anything weird and macabre and crazy mysteries like the one we're going to talk about tonight.
Yes, totally. So I have the Gonzo Chronicles up on the screen so that you know how to spell that. But definitely go check out Cyrus Alderwood's Gonzo Chronicles, and I can't wait to listen to what you have to say about the Ouija board. For another time, I have some cool and weird stories about the Ouija board because, you know, I have a few family members that are no longer with us that, man, they believed in that stuff. But tonight, we are talking about how about I just introduce the young lady? And coming to the screen, this is Miss Wallace is her maiden name. Her first name is Minnie. Minnie Wallace goes a little bit like this. Miss Minnie, she was tall, graceful, slender, well-developed, and now we're describing a 15-year-old girl, mind you. She had perfect complexion, white with rose blooming on her cheeks and blood red. Her hair was long, black, large black eyes, and heavy eyelashes. With a mastery of expression, completed the picture, right? Which was absolutely rare. She caught the eye of everybody. Now, her backstory is this. She was not only very well educated, she went to a private school, boarding school that her mother sent her to. And her and her sister lived together with her mother. Both of them knew how to play the piano. Her sister was an accomplished singer, so they would entertain as her mother had people over. So how many people did her mother have over, you wonder? Well, her mother, however, fairly recently divorced to Minnie's coming to age years, she ran a boarding house. And the boarding house was located in New Orleans on number 222 Canal Street in New Orleans. If you happen to maybe live near there, you'd know where it is. Dora was Minnie's sister, and they lived... So it says here they lived in the red light district of Storyville. The Wallace girls were famous for the beauty, and the mother took in many different people, especially around a very pinnacle time of her life at the World's Fair. And from there, I'm going to let Cyrus pick it up to the first torrid detail of this young lady's life.
Yes. She was a looker, to say the least. She was, in true sense, a Creole. And I mean, from the tradition of like back to French ancestry and just that debonair beauty. And again, we're talking 15, 16 years old,
Yeah.
and probably looked much older than her years. Not much, but she looked obviously mature, and she caught the eye of everyone, every suitor. And living in a red light district probably doesn't lend to the best kind of lifestyle, I would imagine. And a young girl like that, a little bit of a wild side, probably a bit of a wild streak. She ends up meeting a man that's down there traveling from Emporia, Kansas, by the name of James R. Walkup.
Mm-hmm.
An impressive guy. Not only is he a very wealthy guy, business owner and everything, he's also the mayor of Emporia. So he is well known in the community. He's a kind of a pillar of the community of Emporia, no less. And he is smitten with 15-year-old Minnie Wallace, and this little 15-year-old Creole. The ages of James Walkup is kind of varies. One source says he was 49, the other one 52. Either way, you're a creepy old man going after a child, in my opinion. So we had talked a little bit about that. Like, first of all, what kind of seedy person goes around looking for a 15-year-old girl when he's out of town, on business, so to speak. So that's one thing. What kind of girl at the age of 15 is smitten by a 50-year-old man? And I'm starting to hear that Kanye song, Gold Digger, pop in my head.
But you know what? She wasn't, though.
No. She was incredibly smart. She could have done any number of things with her life. However, after a whirlwind romance that took her out of New Orleans, potentially through Covington, Cincinnati, Ohio, over to Emporia, Kansas, they got married. Whirlwind romance, and 49 or 52-year-old James Walkup, whichever the age was correct, married then 16-year-old Minnie Wallace, now known as Minnie Wallace Walkup. And I'm sure that put off a lot of talk and a lot of gossip going on through Emporia at that point, because you're a man with a barely 16-year-old bride. And he's, kind of king of the town, the mayor, incredibly rich for those times. And within a month to the day, I think it was, after their wedding, well, guess who dies? Wow, James Walkup.
He sure does. And you know what? I have some information about him. And from what I was reading, and let me know if it contradicts a little bit about what you were reading, but he came to the World's Fair and stayed with Mrs. Wallace and her family and everybody else who's in the boarding house for the World's Fair in 1885 in New Orleans. And this is where he met Minnie. He fell absolutely in love with her because these girls, her sister Dora would sing, Minnie would play the piano, they would probably dance and they were professionally trained to entertain.
Exactly.
What's that?
I said exactly.
And so this man, he comes into town. Let me tell you a little bit about his backstory. He was successful at everything that he did, from the information that I could gather. He was a Civil War veteran, but he had a little bit of a sketchy side. And the same thing with me. I found that he was somewhere between his late 40s to his early 50s. It's not totally confirmed as to exactly how old, but her age keeps coming up consistently, that when he first met her, she was 15. And then when they got married, she was 16. But he enjoyed everything that was big and affluent and women in excess and sexual experience in excess, to the point, like you had said, he did pass away, and we'll get into that a little bit further. But there were physicians that came forward and said that he had been treated for gonorrhea from exposure with prostitutes and all this type of stuff. So he comes into town. I don't know that Minnie's all that into him, because she kind of gives him like the blow off. Like, she's not really interested. So he goes back home, and before he goes home, he asks for her hand in marriage by her mother. And her mother said, no, you don't want Minnie. She has so many suitors. She's so beautiful. She's very popular. You don't want Minnie. So he goes home, and to prove that he's serious, he starts writing to the mother about how attracted he is to Minnie.
Yes.
And then those letters begin to turn, and they begin to be directed towards Minnie. And I guess something in there happens because he makes another visit down. And that's when all of a sudden, he offers a lump sum of money to marry her. And I did the convergence of how much money that was. So he offers $4,000 to Minnie's mother if he could marry her. And today that conversion is $107,000 for her hand in marriage.
That is a lot of money. But compared to what she got later, drop in the bucket.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, we're going to find out some very interesting things. So I guess people watching the live thing, I guess I would ask, I mean, just at this point, what is your impression of Minnie? Because we know this guy is probably weird for kind of targeting a 15-year-old girl and then paying her mother nonetheless. But what do you think of her morality and the fact that she married the guy and left home at 16? And this guy is kind of a seedy guy anyway, like you said, possibly treated for gonorrhea. Once they got back into Emporia, it was no secret that she wasn't the only game in town to him. He had known many women around there and still did. And even though he might have been infatuated with her, there was some talk, rumors that he was already seeing some of these same women he had been with over and over and over again while they were married. So I'm kind of curious what people's impression would be of Minnie at this point.
Oh, totally. I just put that up on the screen. So anybody who's watching, a lot of these podcasts, you kind of scroll through and go, oh, that looks interesting, but you don't really ever turn on the sound. Turn on the sound, like totally right now, stop and turn us on, because the question is, what do you think of Minnie for marrying a man 40 years her senior in 1885, mind you? This is a very Puritan time for most people.
Yeah, it's not a shotgun wedding. It's just, it is what it is.
We have something here watching. He says, I wonder if she was pressured by her mother. That could be $107,000 to a divorcee in 1885. That probably looked pretty good.
Probably it did. Especially living in a red light district. Maybe she wanted out of that district. I mean, she taught her well. Maybe she wanted to live more upscale.
Right.
Like they deserved and she deserved. Possibility.
Right.
But then you're going to kind of question that too. Like, what kind of mother pawns her daughter off it for money?
Well, you know what? I think they were both, at some point, I think they clued into how much money this man may have been attached to or been worth, because after he offers all this money, and then I guess mom says yes, they kind of shake him down for a little bit more, because then there's some going back and forth before their wedding of, Minnie takes a trip out to Emporia, Kansas to look around to see if she would like it. So she's playing the whole game of, oh, I don't know. I'm not sure if I would like it, So they go to Emporia and she's like, oh, yes, I really like this. So I can imagine, a man worth what he was worth probably has a very lavish home, very lavish lifestyle, all this kind of stuff. So she was into it. But then they come home to mother and say, well, we're going to get married in Emporia. And she's like, oh, no. You'll get married in Cincinnati so your aunt can go to the wedding.
For what reason, who knows? But she had friends and family in Covington, which is just across the river from Cincinnati. So it's basically a suburb. It's just on the Kentucky side of the river. And, so that's where she goes. And then on to Emporia. And, with this guy being his age and his experience, he has got to be, at that point, so ego tripping over having the eye of such a young girl that you can imagine this is I joke around and call it the Hugh Hefner complex. Who the hell is going to be attracted to an 85-year-old man, but Hey, Anna Nicole married for love. We heard that too. So
Yeah, we heard that for a very long time. We have a viewer, Jane Bunker. She is chiming in here, and she has a great point. She said, it reminds me of arranged marriages. Very common way back then, probably for the stability of her family. That's a very strong point.
yeah, that's a really great point. But guess what happens a month after they're married?
Huh.
Yeah, he drops dead, and from
Sure.
arsenic poisoning. He's dead a month to the day. And hence, Minnie Wallace Walkup goes into the national limelight. She is on every, what if the equivalent of tabloids back then. She was the news.
She was.
Been a Kardashian before the Kardashians were here. She's splashed all over everything, and there are people who absolutely adore her and think she's innocent because she just looks so innocent. And then there are those who are like, no, this girl is guilty of sin, and she's killed her husband.
Right. And I brought up, it's a drawing. I'm not sure if it's an actual rendering of the drawing or what have you, but this would be sort of like her wanted poster. And it is frontal and side views. It's really interesting of her eyes and any blemishes or marks she may have had on her face, which obviously she didn't have many from her description. Her lips from the side view and front view. It's really, really interesting drawing that we have up on the screen here. So you know what I found was really interesting was how he died. Yes, it was 1 month. So they got married July 22nd. He died August 22nd. She's really very young and not thinking if she's going to kill her husband because she doesn't want to be married to him because he's old.
Yeah, impression that she's much brighter than this, right?
She is. She blames the oysters. Did you read that?
No, I missed that one. Okay, let's hear this. Okay.
So a week before he actually dies, he begins to get sick, and she it seems like she's beginning to poison him, but she doesn't want to just kill him right away. So the first dose of poisoning made him very, very sick, and the doctors come in and they say, oh, well, it seems like it's strychnine poisoning. And she said, oh, it's the oysters. He had very bad oysters, and they're killing him. So, of course, that's not really what it was. It was arsenic poisoning, I believe, from what I have here in my notes. Is that correct that you have?
Yeah, that it was arsenic poisoning. It was they determined that for sure during the trial.
Right.
It was arsenic.
Right.
And during the trial, here's an interesting thing during the trial. This is I'm sure you came across this too. She was so worried about whether she was going to get convicted or not. There was a lawyer by the name of William J., who saw her in the newspaper, in the tabloids.
Yep.
Saw her picture and just knew from the look of her eyes she had the look of an innocent child. So anyway, I guess he probably was smitten with her as well. And he goes in and spends thousands of dollars of his own money defending her in this trial.
He sure does.
So, does she have a dead husband? But she's got another guy who's completely attracted to her. That's like, hey, let me spend my money and get you off the hook. So that happens. But I was kind of curious because during the whole show, as you want to call it, for the trial, there were so many people that were wanting photographs and drawings that.
Oh, we lost sound for a second. Okay, you're back.
Okay, I had a phone call and I just.
Okay.
So anyway, it's she actually requested a female photographer come in and take a professional photo of her to disseminate around the country because she's this, popular thing now. Mm-hmm. And the photographer, she came in, took the picture, and got rich off of that one photo. And ironically, her name was D.B. Rich, the photographer. So
interesting.
The one
I had that.
That's the one that goes to all the tabloids. She sells enough of them, she got rich herself. So.
Now, see, during the trial, I have a couple of excerpts from this starts in July 29, 1885, from the newspaper. It begins, D.H. Walkup and wife of Fairfax, Missouri, Have been here a couple of weeks visiting friends and relatives. Mr. W is a constant reader of the news. So I'm not exactly sure what that's talking about, but this is all while she's on trial. And this trial was so highly publicized. I mean, this thing goes on for pages and pages of little excerpts. At one point it says, September 16th, 1885, the future does not look nearly so dark for Mrs. Walkup of Emporia, who is charged with the crime of poisoning her husband, as it did 2 weeks ago. So I guess there are things that begin to turn in the trial. And from what I found was that the judge finally ruled not to charge her with the murder of her husband because she was so young, and they were afraid of what that would do to a young lady being locked up for so long.
Well, that's interesting because it seemed like during the trial, things actually weren't looking her way, but then a lot of things started coming out about Mr. Ketchum or Mr. Walkup. I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we will.
And that not only was he living a kind of like a double life, notorious life, but he had been traveling around. He was addicted to arsenic. He was actually taking it himself like a drug, and taking a little bit at a time. And that was what his death was just poison because he took too much of it. And that they had receipts where he had went to other locations outside of Emporia to buy arsenic so that people locally wouldn't know he was addicted.
So now one of those, it's not cyanide. Cyanide, I think, just straight up kills you. But yeah. Arsenic, one of them was a remedy at the time,
right,
for syphilis, right?
Yeah, it was considered a remedy. So maybe because you read that he had possibly had gonorrhea.
Yes.
Perhaps maybe he suspected syphilis without being confirmed. Because that stuff kind of drives you a little nuts, right? From what I've read about it.
Yeah, it'll make you crazy. Yeah. That's what I understand.
He's going around and this stuff up maybe as a treatment without, I mean, we didn't, you got to consider the times we didn't have the FDA. Everybody's selling snake oil poison, remedies for this, that, and the other.
Were people just dirty? Like, don't you know that you have something like that? Don't you, like, at least have an itch or something?
You would think, but I
don't know.
They didn't have running water,
I guess that's true. So in the newspapers here, there's something really interesting. So in the Union, November 20th, 1885, Mrs. Minnie Wallace Walkup walked up the streets of Emporia after her acquittal, receiving the congratulations of her many friends in that city. Ooh, she must have made some serious enemies.
Yeah, I'm sure she did, because being married to the man for, a month. She actually netted $500,000 from his will. So anybody else that in town that had any kind of debt owed by him or, other family members, they got screwed out of $500,000. Now, what is $500,000 in today's terms?
$7.1 million.
Yeah, she made enemies.
Yeah.
She married for a month. Guy's dead of arsenic poisoning, and walks out with $7 million.
Yeah.
And, yeah, she made
in the late 1800s. Just $7.1 million.
So all of a sudden, more financially stable than any man she'll ever meet in her life. Almost.
Oh, totally. So why would she ever get married again, right? Like, so this is it. She gets off. She's young. She's beautiful. No, that's not it. She's got this torrid affair going on that I read about, which was with her attorney. And I'm trying to find the attorney's picture. Oh, he's already up here. I'm not even paying attention. So this old guy is up here. And then we get to the senator, former Louisiana Governor William P. Kellogg, so of the Kellogg dynasty. Minnie's senior by 39 years. So again, another older man that sees a very beautiful, ravishing woman. According to observers, act like a decently gone by lover. Like they were just lovers forever, right? And that's just kind of how they traveled around the Southwest together. But it is rumored that Kellogg financed her move to Chicago. So now she's gone. She's in Chicago.
And you got to wonder, why would anybody finance her move if she's worth that much money? At some point, this is just me thinking outside the box, and tell me if I'm way off base here. But when people keep spending money on somebody who's got tons of money, then she has some sort of interesting leverage. She doesn't want to use her money. She's going to use yours. So what does she have on these people? Is there some sort of blackmail maybe, or coercion? Is she maybe too high profile to kill?
You can only imagine. I mean, she's not exactly growing up in the most wholesome of ways. So she's definitely not naive. She's trained to in a wonderful boarding school. She has a decent in convergence between today and then degree or pedigree of education, right? Now she's got money, and she only mingles with people who have more money than she does, has more status, who has political power. She knows what she's doing.
Oh, obviously at this point she does, yeah.
Yeah.
And then next thing you know, she ends up in Chicago.
She does. And so in Chicago, lead us into it. What happens in Chicago?
Well, she stumbles onto another man, and
yep.
I totally smitten with her. Again, twice her age, at least. Upper 40s, right? By the name of John B. Ketchum. Now, Ketchum is smitten with him. They have this whirlwind romance, and they marry quickly.
I believe this one. I believe it. I could not find a picture of James. I found a picture of George, and this is an actual tintype picture. He is handsome.
Well, he's upper. Obviously, these people are upper crust, in society. It reminded me as I was reading the stuff about this, the Roaring Twenties. You always think about that upper crust of society, the group that F. Scott Fitzgerald's characters always wanted to break into. Like wanted to be with the Jay Gatsbys and wanted to be with all the high-end people in New York, or West Egg as they called it in Great Gatsby. Mm-hmm. Well, this is sort of like those times, right? So she's finding the upper crust of civilization, of society, high society, and she is just rubbing elbows with them and then marrying again. But this was in her house that they lived in, even though John Ketchum was incredibly wealthy, very wealthy. Anyway, he was found dead in her house, and then
was her house in Wisconsin? Because what I have here in my notes is that so his wife divorced him.
Right.
Left him open so that she could marry him, so Minnie could marry him. But Minnie took him out to Wisconsin for a secret marriage ceremony. So they're trying to keep this hush. And they're either trying to keep this hush because she's already stirred up so much on a national basis.
At that point, yeah. I think you're right there that she was trying to keep it hushed. I completely forgot that the guy was married, and Ketchum was cheating on his wife with her.
Yes.
But they weren't really hiding it. They were going out in public everywhere. And then he promised he would divorce his wife. He did. And then he marries her. And then, oh my goodness, Elizabeth, what happens to Mr. Ketchum? I wonder.
Now, this one's fairly legitimate from my research. He was unfortunately an alcoholic who was already dying of cirrhosis of the liver, of alcoholism. And so it says here that on November 1st, 1897, Ketchum signed a will and left everything to Minnie. And then 12 days later, he died. So he dies in the same year. Right? That's what I've got.
Yeah. It was no time. It was maybe 2 or 3 months. I mean, it wasn't long before he was dead. And then, but then what I read was the family had contested. He had family that had contested the will, and they settled out of court, and she walked away with $200,000.
Again.
Right. So, which is probably the equivalent of what about 2.5 mil, probably?
No, that was 7.1. Again. So now she's up to 14.2 million.
Okay. So she's making bank and hobnobbing with high society, and who knows what dirt she has on people. She's the mistress. And, again, she's the belle of the ball at the same time. They're not hiding any of these romances. And then at that point, she just, you would think she would just disappear.
Nope.
She made her money. No, what does she do next? I wonder.
Well, next I have in 1900, Minnie began a relationship with Delancey Horton Louderback. Here is
Yeah.
Louderback right here. He's got one of those funky mustaches and go all the way up his sideburns, you know. And he was 20 years her senior. So a little bit of a younger man, you know, sort of like Ketchum. It seems like Ketchum came just about as close as they could get to, you know, her age, which was still had to be 20 years her senior. So now here he is again, another one, 20 years her senior, and a married man. Louderback and Minnie would travel together while he was still married. This is like an MO. She's doing it again. So now she's traveling with this guy. After his wife died, he updated his will and left a quarter of his estate to Minnie. But something was weird about this dude.
Yeah, well, actually, that's where I kind of lost track of some of the stuff on Outerback. So
I've got some good stuff on him. Okay, so he's in Chicago, right?
He was a businessman, capitalist, incredibly wealthy, right?
Mm-hmm. Incredibly wealthy, yes. So he's in Chicago, and let me see here. Wife died. All right, so wife's dead, and now we're going to keep Minnie. And this is where she begins to get a little nervous, because I'm going to bring up to the screen here. Here's a house that Louderback decided to build for Minnie, her house, her estate. This thing takes up an entire city corner block in Chicago, right? It's huge.
Yeah, the house within a house, right?
Yes, it's the house within the house. So here's the next picture of the house within the house. This is the inside layout. And this is where Minnie begins to get really flippin' nervous, because you go into what just looks like a beautiful estate. And then all of a sudden it's this house inside of a house to where she can be completely locked up, never to leave again, but well taken care of. That's his plan. So he must have, maybe she shared a little too much or something, because he had this plan.
Yeah, because when you go inside, it's like like your picture shows, you walk in the front door and then there's like a yard around the house that's on the inside of the house.
Right.
That's room for bodyguards and security.
Yeah.
So that he can always have a watch on everything she's doing. And didn't he make some sort of comment that nobody could even go to the back room without him knowing?
Oh yeah. Oh, he wanted this thing locked down. Like if it was in the day of cameras today, like there would be a camera in every part.
Yeah, I mean, like listening devices, everything. So he was paranoid, wildly jealous of anything and everything related to her.
Totally.
And he built a prison for her that he tried to impress her with as a big house.
Yeah.
And he spent money on it. And no one.
But she didn't care. She had 14.2 million. She didn't give a damn.
So he built this huge thing for her, and no one ever lived in it.
Yeah, no, because what happened was she fled. So she left while this thing was in its final stages of construction. Nobody had moved into the house yet, but he was almost finished with it, right? Almost ready. Like it was fully furnished. Everything she could ever want was in this house, except for her. So he's almost about to finish it. She gets the hell out of the country. She goes to England. And in England, she meets, and this is where I need a little bit of your help on exactly who it is that she meets, because I only have that she met a sailor in England. While she was there, she meets the sailor and then writes a letter to Louderback. And the letter to Louderback says, I have found the love of my life. We just got married and I'm happily married to an English sailor. Boom. She puts that in the post. It gets to him. And now all of a sudden, this guy dies of cyanide poisoning while she's gone. Can't pin it on her.
No, she's gone. And what I'd read was that he had sent a letter asking for her hand in marriage again.
Yes.
And he was waiting for the cable to come back. And and he was getting very angry because he had to wait. And then when he got, the cable back, she said she had, but it was actually a British officer looking for his name. But he was so jealous, but he was so distraught with I guess, heartbroken, right?
Right.
he thought he was going to get to bring her back and win her back. And anyway, I think probably what he did was he took cyanide. And what I read was that he was planning on doing a treatment with cyanide. I don't know what people thought of cyanide back then, but you and I know today it kills you. I mean, yeah. And so I think he probably took cyanide as a quick and easy way out, because everything that he had kind of planned for, hoped for, even in his madness of building a prison for this woman, he just couldn't take the pain, and just Lolita struck again. Another man's dead, because of his love for her, I guess. It depends. Right. Imagine what the tabloids would have said, like, Minnie strikes again.
I have an interesting question from a viewer. How would she carry her money? 14.2 million. I mean, they had banks. But 14.2. How do you think she carried it?
I guess just banks. I don't know how you would carry any of that.
I don't either. But you know what? Keating must be the name that we were talking about before we came on. So her name, after all this, and there's still one more detail to this that we're about to tell you, but her name, after all these guys, is Minnie Wallace, maiden name, Walkup, first husband, Ketchum, second husband, Keating. Keating must have been the third husband, which was a sailor. I couldn't find anything on the sailor.
I couldn't find anything. I mean, it's YouTube, Wikipedia, Google searches, landed
nothing. So that must have been his name, because after all of this and all these dead guys, what happens?
Yeah, well, she's just wealthy, rich. Does she stay in Britain? That's the question I had. Or did she?
No, she goes quiet. From 1915, which I have her passport application right here, which is dated. Let me switch it around in the broadcast so we can see it a little bit better. It is dated February 17th, 1915. So that's her passport application. And from about just before 1920 until she died in 1957 at age 88, there's nothing.
Because she was widowed again, because her husband, that was the British officer, he went off to war and he was killed in war. So he never made it back. So we assume that's her last husband.
Right. Because she died under the name, the last name that's registered to her was, and she was actually living under a little bit of a different name. She was living as Estelle Minnie Keating. So Keating was the last recorded name. She died in San Diego, California, and was in 1957 at 88.
Yeah, maybe she just had enough of the paparazzi of the day. I guess it's enough to wear anybody out, especially if you're half the people love you and half the people hate you. At some point, that's gotta be a drag. I mean, she's lost 3 husbands.
Yeah, and my question for you, and I have a picture of her at, I'd say she's probably about 45, maybe 50 years old here. So my question for you, Cyrus, in your opinion, do you think she had a hand in all the deaths, or was she just young and dumb and didn't want to be married to this old guy? Killed the first one.
I think, I don't know. You never know. But my impression is, there was this movie a few years ago that had the girl from Scream in it, but she was like this girl who lived out on the bayou, and it had Kevin Bacon in it. The name of the movie escapes me, but she was so slick and smart. She got away with everything: murder, laundering money, everything under the sun. She was too smart, and everybody just assumed she was like this innocent. No, I think she probably wanted out of New Orleans because of the lifestyle she was living. She was above it and got what she didn't want, and probably killed her first husband. Even if he was doing some arsenic, there's nothing to say that she couldn't slip a little extra in his tea, brush that along, and make it look like an accident. And you have plenty enough time to, if anybody's talking about him, she could pick up on rumors like, well, this guy was buying stuff everywhere.
Yeah.
You could plant that seed. A month is quick, but this guy must have had crazy lifestyle because people were talking about him anyway, right? So he was probably yeah, I think she probably killed him. The second guy, probably not, but I say this, but she probably, even if she didn't like him, there's more ways to get what you want other than actually killing somebody. She could have tried to break that man's heart every day and make him drink, drive him to drink. He's already an alcoholic. How much does it take to push somebody over the edge to drink just that much more every day? You know what I mean?
See, you know what though? That one, because I want to stop you right there for a minute, because the age difference wasn't that huge. And I mean, looking at this tintype of this guy for the times, he was pretty striking. I think she actually may have liked him.
Very debonair, but yeah, there's so many things that could happen behind closed doors that we don't know. What happened in the home? Was he a nice guy? Did he beat his wife? I don't know.
Yeah.
Even if they had a normal marriage, I mean, he could have died of alcoholism, just like you said. So she may not, but I think in the first instance she probably did. And I think when Louderback killed himself, she probably didn't care. She was like, he was already a weirdo trying to build a prison for her. I think she got away with murder the first time. At that point, I think she just knew what she was doing and she wanted more money. So she had money, and I'm sure she already knew the guy was an alcoholic when she married him. I mean, how long is an alcoholic going to live?
Right. I think she didn't kill Louderback because she knew that she would definitely go to jail if she did.
Yeah.
I think she knew she had to just totally get away from that one. I don't know that she would have even wanted to stick around in that crazy house and attempt to.
Oh no, I wouldn't step foot in a place like that, because you're going to be spied on and watched day in, day out. Everything you do is going to be put under scrutiny, and that's just maddening. I mean, you might as well get, so I don't know. What's your impression? Should she kill the first guy?
Yeah, I think it wound up being, sort of like our friend Jane said. I think it was an arranged marriage. Mom needed the money, red light district, boarding house. That's not a family that already has money. So I think these girls were groomed for their beauty. I think they were given some talents to be able to take that beauty a little bit farther with some of the more affluent set. So for lack of taste in saying this, I think she was kind of sold off. And she didn't like that. Like, she didn't want to be in Kansas. But she liked the money. She liked the end result. So yeah, I think she was young and dumb enough. Maybe mom whispering in her ear, like, oh, honey, eventually,
Yeah.
wink, wink, maybe, but then this young, dumb idiot goes and kills him in 1 month. Like, hello. So yeah, I think she definitely did kill the first one. I think the first one helped to acclimate her to older men, which is how she got acquitted and didn't serve any jail time, didn't have any sentence, because she was allegedly sleeping with her defense attorney, which was a very much older man. And I'll bring him to the screen right now. Very much older man. He was said to be in his 60s and she's 16.
Yeah.
So, there's some of that. And then I think after that, it just sort of rambles on, because what's the next one? So Ketchum, she has a couple of different affairs. She realizes that she can use men for their money. She winds up getting a full relocation to Chicago. And then she meets this Ketchum guy. And I think Ketchum was really an actual love because he was the closest to her age. That's the only thing that makes sense. But unfortunately, he was so far into his own alcoholism that he was dying by the time he got a divorce from his wife. So,
Yeah.
I just think that it's a really sketchy past, and it's probably all derived from a poor mentality. You're growing up kind of poor, and you're going to take advantage of life to get to where you're trying to go. And in her case, it got her $14.2 million.
Yeah, and you got some comments here. Bernard Martin says, let me what was the last comment? He said something that was a Tony Curtis lookalike.
Oh, the last comment I have is, wow, they didn't have Viagra back then either. She must have been really hot. Well, you know what? There's a lot of reports about, yes, for the time, she was. She had this cherub face, which, that fuller face meant vitality. It meant
Yeah.
that you weren't starving. So they wanted the fuller faces and the curvier bodies. And she was supposed to be slender, but with a heavy chest and long flowing hair. And
Yeah.
a lot of things that were attractive of the time.
Yeah, I mean, French descent. You have more flush red lips and just So she had the look at the time, and can you imagine how that would fit in today's pop culture if this story was going to? You remember all the hoopla that happened with Bonaduce? What was not Bonaduce? What's the guy's name? The Long Island Lolita back in the '90s, and you remember that?
Yeah.
Well,
it kind of happens today, doesn't it? I mean, not saying anything bad against some of the actresses, but we have actresses that have married tycoons, actresses that have married princes, and in an instant you go from, yes, they've worked themselves to a decent living on their own, but they become huge heirs.
They do, and it's not uncommon to see, I guess, people in that realm to divorce, remarry, divorce, remarry, divorce, remarry over and over and over again.
Right.
I mean, that's not even uncommon in this day and age. I joked around with a friend of mine one time. I was like, "What number wife are you on?" He's like, "Are you talking about common law?" And I'm like, "Oh my God, I think third wife or something." I'm like, I don't know, but people, yeah, it's a fascinating story, Bernard, who was commenting on here. But yeah, it was, you picked a good one, Elizabeth. That was a fun thing to research, and just like for the times, how seedy that was just
totally.
Yeah.
Totally. And I guess that's kind of what caught my eye, because I just started reading about, the first two husbands, and I'm like, no way. Oh, come on. No way. And it just it's the story that like keeps giving. It just kept giving. And then I'm constantly going back in my mind going, but this was only 1900. I mean, people who got divorces were excommunicated from their church.
Yeah.
And that wasn't even in the 1900s. Like, they were still excommunicated from their church in the 60s. So I can imagine you had huge amounts of your own community that knew you as a upstanding married person, to just the most low life, biggest talk of the town kind of thing. And I don't think that's comfortable for anybody, no matter what age or walk of life you're from. You don't want to be the biggest talk of the town.
Jane made a comment, dirty old men.
Yeah, totally dirty old men.
Oh my gosh. But yeah, it's not uncommon. I mean, how many times we catch politicians these days having affairs with young,
yeah,
Bill Clinton, the last one we knew of, right?
That we knew of. Yeah, there's definitely, I don't know. I think weren't we talking about that before we went live tonight? We were still in the green room, and we were talking about just how you get older, you realize how young was young. Like, when we were 20, it didn't occur to us how young that is. But when you're in your 40s and you have a friend of yours who's like a 40-something-year-old guy, and he's like, oh, I got this 21-year-old girlfriend, it's kind of like, ooh, that's really?
Yeah, what in the hell do you talk about on a date? What do you have in common?
Nothing.
Exactly. I mean, well, one thing, and that's about it. But yeah, I mean, I guess the Hugh Hefner lifestyle fits some, but I don't see how.
Yeah, no.
I was 25. I'll be honest with you. At my age, dating somebody 25, like, that's just like, I have a niece that age. It's like, that's not cool. Yeah, like, that's exactly. I would be like, no.
Yeah, exactly.
Nieces or nephews that age, no. All right.
No. Well, thank you so much for going down the rabbit hole with me on this Minnie Wallace. What the heck is she? Wallace Walkup Ketchum Keating.
With a few lovers thrown in between that should. Wow, story! What a freaking story! But it was fun.
It was fun. So it's on you. You're going to pick the next topic. I can't wait.
I'll message you offline.
Yeah.
But I will, if this is one you want to get into, because this is a big rabbit hole.
Okay.
Conspiracy theory of conspiracy theories. And you know who would love it?
Who?
That had on your other show, Talking Music, Ken Dodge.
Okay.
You would love this one. By the way, I'm a big Kiss fan. I'm a huge Kiss fan. In fact, you know a guy that walks around dressed up like Gene Simmons. Like, if I ever run into that cat, I'm going to buy him a beer. Only problem is, like, without the makeup, he kind of looks like my brother. Good. Bald.
Yeah, he's a really cool guy, and he is for hire as Gene Simmons, you know, in the costume, and that's a professional costume. That, like he said, that's not a Halloween costume. So it's Music City Demon is how you find him, and how you find you is the Gonzo Chronicles podcast. Tell us, give us a little bit of information. How do we listen? How do we find you?
Yeah, if you just want to listen online, I'm on podbean.com. So if you go to gonzochronicles.podbean.com, you can listen on your computer. I'm on iTunes and I'm on Spotify. So if you have a smartphone, just go into your app there for your podcast and just search the Gonzo Chronicles. And that's me. If there's anything weird that we can talk about, or just really any interesting topics, even you and you were on there. We've had a couple of shows where we talked some weird stuff, and some fun stuff too, books and like any number of things. So it's like a anything goes kind of podcast that we just talk about whatever, but mostly if it's weird shit, we're going to talk about it.
I can't wait. So the next one that's coming up is on the Ouija board.
Yeah, actually I'm going to do one before then. It's going to be a short one talking about the mysterious lights of Brown Mountain. They actually made the X-Files did an episode about this back in the late 90s, but it's mysterious lights down at the Blue Ridge Mountains, and no one has ever been able to explain it for hundreds of years. They show up between September and November, timely every single night, and no one has ever had an explanation for it. Some blame UFOs. Native American legend says it's there was a big war between two native tribes, and it's the women from the tribes going, their ghosts actually going out looking for the fallen warriors, and so their orbs. So who knows? There's all kinds of crazy mysteries in this world, and I just like talking about them.
That's so cool.
Yeah, and hopefully I'm already working on the next book in the Gonzo Chronicles, and hopefully that'll be out this summer.
Oh, awesome. I can't wait for it. I mean, the Gonzo Chronicles are hilarious. That is an awesome book.
Yeah, book 2's on its way to you, so you'll have it.
Yay! I'm gonna have to do a reading on that. So what is your schedule? What evenings or how often does the Gonzo Chronicles podcast on Podbean and Spotify and YouTube?
I fly by pants. I'm random as hell. So if I wake up in the morning, I want to do one, I do it and I upload it. Generally what I do I try to keep these as real as possible. A lot of people go back and do editing and things like that. I just record it raw, and then even with guests, and then I'll just upload the conversations just as they are, so you don't have any editing out. I want people to hear exactly what it is. And I don't do Patreon. I know a lot of people do that, so the podcast is free. I just tell folks, if you want to be nice, go jump on Amazon and buy one of my books. I get a couple of bucks out of it. You get a book, we'll call it even. Thank you. So, but it's a fun show to do, and I didn't know how much I'd love doing it until I started doing it. It's like having my own radio show. Kind of like doing this. I love doing these things here with you. These are so much fun.
Oh, thank you so much for your time and doing these shows with me. I really appreciate it. And I want to pop your name up here one more time because, as he mentioned, he is an author. He has, how many books do you have right now?
I think there's 10 on Amazon.
Yeah, 10 on Amazon. So just search Cyrus Alderwood and you'll see so many different, I got to say, genres of books to read. Like, you just have so much content out there that is so diverse, from one series to the next, or some of it isn't even a series. It's just a one-off book on a topic, correct?
Yeah, like I've got 2 different books that are collections of short stories in the horror genre. Then I've got couple of comedies, and I've got the Gonzo Chronicles series that's out that I kind of spoof weird things, but I try to make people interested in these odd topics and mysteries, but I do it with comedy and a little humor in there, and then a little seriousness. And then I wrote a biblical thriller, believe it or not, called Revelation Calling, about the mystery behind the Georgia Guidestones, and that was a fun trip to make. to be down there and kind of poke my nose around in Elberton and have no one want to talk to me about it. But
yeah, that's a story for another show too. That's a wild story.
But yeah, I write all kinds of stuff. I don't like being pigeonholed into a genre, so I just write whatever I feel like.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much. Well, everybody, go out there, go find Cyrus and purchase a book today on Amazon. And thank you so much for watching. This has been a whole lot of fun. Please, if you have any suggestions for shows in the future, or you just have any questions, go ahead and hit us up at ecooperstudios@gmail.com. I want to say a special thanks to NeuroGum, NeuroMints, the refreshing, all not totally natural. I was about to say all natural. Pumped up with vitamins. How about we say that? Pumped up with your B vitamins. Fuel your body, activate your mind is what they say. You can find that at Walmart. You can find it on Amazon. You can find it. I actually saw it recently at CVS. So they are all over the place. Their gum is really, really nice. It stays with you. It has a long-lasting flavor. So go to Get Neuro or neurogum.com. That's neurogum.com today and purchase yours. So everybody, thank you so much for watching the show. Cyrus, thank you so much for your time. And I cannot wait until next time. We're going to advertise in plenty of time for you to schedule it to join us one Monday evening at 9 p.m. Eastern so that we can dive into another meaty topic.
Absolutely. Hey, thanks so much. Good night, everyone.
Good night.